Welcome to Backyard Cigars, and today I have something very special. Very, very special. I don't even, I can't even believe how I got a hold of this and the fact that I got a hold of this because I had wanted to get a hold of this when it was originally released and I just wasn't able to. And in 2022 or 2023, was it 2023? I think I got it sometime in either 23 or early 24, but I was able to get a hold of Macanudo's estate. And this is the estate reserve from 2015. This is the 2015 release. I actually missed the 2014 release. And when I heard it was going to be re-released in 2015, and another rendition of it, I was very excited. But when I didn't get a hold of it, I just gave up. I really gave up, and I honestly think that if I had tried harder in 2015, I would have found a few, but I didn't. And that's what happens when you give up. You never know what you could have accomplished. But luckily, someone that I spoke with, a good friend of mine named George, said, "Hey, that cigar that you were looking for became available." And it's available here and here. And I don't even remember what site it was. I know that it was a very obscure site, and but legit. And I just didn't know anything about that cigar site. But he put me onto it, sent me the link, and I connected with the guys over there, I think out in Tennessee, and I was able to score two of them. They actually had an inventory of about 5. And I was really tempted to buy all 5, right? Because that's how special and how badly I wanted this cigar. But I had enough money for 2. They were $22 a pop, so that played a role in it. And also I never tasted it before, so it's not like I could say, this is gonna be a cigar that I should stock up on and buy plenty of. I just wanted to try at least one, but I said, let me get 2 just in case. I don't regret getting the 2 just from the looks of the cigar, but we're going to take a closer look at this cigar as I unveil this box and we do what we normally do. A closer look with Backyard Cigars at the Macanudo Estate Reserve 2015 number 8. Welcome to Backyard Cigars, a closer look at the Macanudo 2015 Estate Reserve. And it arrives in this coffin. And let's just get up and close on it. Here we are. It's a little clearer here, right? Limited edition Jamaica. Now we're just going to take a look at the Jamaican colors here. And the barcode. There. 5, 6, 7, 8. Because this is the Macanudo 2015 Estate Reserve number 8. That is why that is there. And we're going to take a look at this. Tobacco cultivation in Jamaica was something that was really started by the families of Cuban exiles that arrived in Jamaica in 1886 to cultivate tobacco and manufacture cigars. So I did do some digging in 1899, details of how Jamaican natives did not plant tobacco, but instead it grew wild, and it was not a part of the Jamaican culture. And this was in a book by Robert Thomas Hill called Cuba and Puerto Rico, Islands of the West. And let's take a look inside here. Okay. Let's see. Put that there. We're going to take a look at this. We're going to remove it from the cellophane in a minute. Doesn't that look marvelous? Doesn't it? Come on, you know it does. You know it does. I know it does. We all do. This is beautiful. And I'm going to tell you the specs in a minute. But first I just want to show you. Look at that. Look at that cellophane, right? Because how old is this cigar now? It is 9 years old. That's right. It is 9 years old. That is a thing of beauty. Yeah, it's a little rustic, but you know what? I like rustic. I love rustic. Now, by 1935, you had the major cigar company in Jamaica by the name of Royal Jamaica Cigar Company, and it was founded by Frederick Gore, and it was the only company selling Jamaican cigars in America. By 1940 to 1953, during World War II, is when Jamaica had its heyday. During World War II, Great Britain could not purchase Cuban cigars, so it turned to its Jamaican colony. Jamaicans moved to Jamaica to manufacture. Cubans moved to Jamaica to manufacture and cultivate tobacco in order to meet the demand. I don't know why I just said Jamaicans. I meant to say Cubans moved to Jamaica. You know what I meant. And Cuban brands were being made in Jamaica. Cuban tobacco was used in the filler, wrapper, and sometimes the binder. And of course, thus began the love affair between Winston Churchill and Jamaican tobacco. Look at that. Look at that. It gives you kind of like a nice effect on the camera with the lighting, right? Here we have an article from the Leader Post, August 20th, 1959. And in it, it details Churchill, cigar guardian, retires. The man who guarded one of Britain's vital war assets, Winston Churchill's Havana cigars, has retired. And it's basically the story of how Churchill would call him to find out if the store where he had a locker and he kept cigars in was still in good shape and if it had been bombed or not. Eventually it was bombed, and he had to tell him that Joseph Zitelli, that is, had to tell Winston Churchill that his prized cigars had been bombed. But when you get down to the bottom, right here, it says, for 28 years, Zitelli operated his tobacco business, and for almost that length of time, he supplied the Churchill Havanas. Eventually, the shop was bombed, and the dealer had to tell Churchill that his wonderful smokes had gone up in smoke. That was the only time I ever knew him to smoke Jamaican cigars, said Zitelli. It took some time to get the Havanas moving again. Mind you, it was cheaper for him, those Jamaican cigars. The shop had been rebuilt. Its principal window decorations is an exhibit of the famous Churchillian stogies. And that's what happened with that. So during the 1950s to the 1960s, Macanudo was originally the name used for a size produced in Cuba by Fernando Palacios for the brand Punch. That's right, Punch. At some point, the Macanudo brand became property of Temple Hall, a Jamaican cigar maker that would produce Macanudo for the British market. 1969 would see General Cigar acquiring Temple Hall and the rights to the Macanudo brand outside of Cuba, and introduced the Jamaican Macanudo. It was blended by legendary blender Alphonse Meyer. When it was developed, Edgar Coleman wanted an aged wrapper, something no one was doing. Well, in 1971, Ramon Cifuentes of Partaga's fame redeveloped and introduced a new Macanudo cigar. The blend contained tobaccos from DR, Jamaica, and Mexico. The wrapper was Connecticut Shade, aged 3 years. Ed Coleman chose Connecticut Shade of higher primings. And at that time, Connecticut Shade was normally used in cheaper cigars. Can you believe that? But Coleman had a vision of using vintage tobaccos, and every year he set aside bales of tobacco for future use. Marketing propelled the Macanudo brand, and new sizes were added as well as the new line, Macanudo Cafe. The blend remained the same until the Jamaican factory closed in the year 2000. That, I mean, this is just beautiful. This is just beautiful. Beautiful. So 1998 would see Consolidated Cigar Corp buying the Royal Jamaica brand. Before they bought it, Hurricane Gilbert struck Jamaica, destroying 35 tobacco farms, 1 million rolled cigars, 1,000 acres of farmland, and Robert L. Gore's original factory from 1935, which his father founded. Countless tobacco houses were also lost. Bring you up close. That says Jamaica. Macanudo. So, in 1989, a year later, General Cigar introduces the vintage cabinet selection using 10-year-old tobacco. And by the late 90s, Club Macanudo was born in New York City as the first branded cigar club in America. Did I get a chance to go there? I think I went there once. 1999, 10 years later, Robert L. Gore, formerly the owner of Royal Jamaica, starts to grow Jamaican tobacco, but he can't find any skilled workers. Okay, look at that. I mean, I just can't stop looking at it. I don't know about you, but I cannot stop looking at this Connecticut broadleaf wrapper. Yeah, that's what it is. Connecticut broadleaf wrapper. But I've made a game time decision that I'm going to talk about the rest of the specs when we start smoking this baby. You know, fast forward to the year 2000. General Cigar moves Macanudo production to Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, as they can no longer use Jamaican tobacco in its blend. This is also a cost-cutting move, as DR is just a cheaper location to produce cigars. Ed Coleman himself stated in an interview with Cigar Aficionado that General Cigar excelled and expanded in large part to its Jamaican tobacco production. It's such a shame that the Jamaican cigar production and the Jamaican cigar companies failed to capitalize on the cigar boom in the 90s due to the hurricane taking out just about every crop. This is a beautiful cigar, let me tell you right now. I had not seen this cigar until this very moment when I opened it now. And I'm telling you right now, I didn't expect it to look like this. I've seen it in pictures. They don't do it justice. This is just an awesome looking cigar. I love the band. I love the coffin. I like the color on the cellophane. I know how well Connecticut broadleaf ages. And we're going to talk about the rest of the spec in just a minute. And now that you've had a closer look at the cigar, which I love to do, I love to take that closer look with you. We just get right up and close, right on the cigar, the construction, the color of the wrapper, the filler, what we can see of it. It's just marvelous, right? But I didn't tell you the specs other than tease you with the fact that it's a Connecticut broadleaf wrapper, which is, as you know, my favorite wrapper. Now, this cigar is classified as a belicoso, but then there's like this. It's a belicoso gordo, is what they call it. So it's technically a Belicoso, just a heftier version of a Belicoso, because it's 6 by 57, and that's another thing that's different for me. Like normally, we get a 54 ring gauge, 56 ring gauge, or 58, and even numbers. But here we got 57, which I think is just different. And I don't, it's still a little bit more tobacco, right? Just getting my lighter here. Yeah, it's a Zippo, but it has the insert for the torch, so that makes it a lot easier for me. Already, oh man, it's freaking delicious. I mean, just the first couple puffs, a lot of cocoa. I'm gonna tell you more about it. So, what I want to tell you now about the specs is very important. I think it is. And I think that's one of the reasons that I chased this cigar for so long. And it took me so long to get it. But it's so much sweeter now that I've actually gotten it. Because this wrapper is a Connecticut broadleaf, aged 10 years. The binder is a Mexican San Andres binder. And the filler is composed of tobaccos from Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, and Jamaica. That's right, Jamaica. And this is what this cigar really is paying homage to the legacy of this brand. Now, let me tell you a little bit something that I wrote. Okay? Now, the filler, Dominican, I don't know how old the Dominican filler is in this. I don't know how old the Nicaraguan filler is in this. But the Jamaican tobacco, which is also known as cow tongue or silver tongue tobacco, is aged 5 years. It is it was 5 years old when it was rolled back in 2015. And so what I'm holding here is essentially a cigar that is 9 years old. It's been in my possession for 8 months, but it's 9 years old. And the Jamaican filler part of the cigar is actually 10 years old because it's from the 2014 crop. So the 2014 crop is what allowed them to make that initial release in 2014. And then in 2015, they drew from the same crop to make the 2015 release. It is limited edition because if you try to find this right now, you're not going to find it. They have said that it will return in the future, but for Christ's sakes, it's almost been 10 years and we haven't seen another edition come forward. This is just so smooth. It's so chocolatey. It's got that cocoa going really strong, really, but in such a complimentary way. Let me tell you a little bit more about this silver tongue, which in Spanish they refer to it as lengua de vaca. Lengua de vaca would be what cow's tongue translates to in Spanish, and lengua de vaca is a varietal that's actually been growing in Jamaica. It's indigenous to Jamaica, and they call it that because when they spread the tobacco out, it kind of looks like a cow's tongue. It's been said that it isn't the most attractive looking tobacco, but it has a slightly sweet flavor to it, and it's smooth, and it's been hailed as really good tobacco. Now, originally the silver tongue lengua de vaca tobacco was used in Jamaica for pipes. It was something that was used to give a little kick to pipe tobacco. And of course, employed in that manner, it wasn't long filler. This is actually long filler in the traditional sense, as the General Cigar blend indicated. And let's talk a little bit. So, like, when this cigar was released, 2014, 2015, it went for, depending on the sizes, because they released a few sizes, from $16 to $18. Again, I mentioned that I purchased it at $22 years after the fact. So I think I still got a good deal on it because I was buying an aged cigar, right? And they put a little bump on it because of the premium for the exclusivity and the limited amount of cigars that were available. I think in total there were about 18,000 cigars, maybe 16,000 cigars in total. So not the smallest limited edition release, but limited, I'd say, in comparison to, say, 50,000 cigars. An interesting thing about the silver tongue tobacco is that General Cigar says that because of how low a yield the crop is for the silver tongue, that it is actually the most expensive filler tobacco on earth. This is what they have said. There's no way for me to really disprove that or even verify that, because I don't know what they paid for it or what it would sell for, right? Because they actually, you know, they have the access to this tobacco, and they're kind of like the grandparents of Jamaican tobacco in many ways. But let me read to you just a little something here without my glasses. Now, Macanudo is Argentinian slang for cool, great, magnificent. People would say that, I guess, in Argentina. I'm not from Argentina, so I'm not familiar with the term. Never used it. Never heard it in the Dominican Republic. But they would say, you know, Macanudo che, or something like that. That's what I read. And again, this is something that was overheard at an Argentinian polo match, and this is what the polo players were saying to each other or saying out loud, and it kind of stuck. And but Macanudo is also the top-selling brand in America. Did you know that? Because I thought I knew that. I think I forgot that. And then when I read it again, I was like, yeah, I've heard that before. And I'm always interested in knowing what the number one selling brand is. So that was interesting. And Macanudo was originally produced in Jamaica using Jamaican tobacco known as cow's tongue or silver tongue, as I mentioned before. In 2010, General Cigar recultivated a small farm in Jamaica for the purpose of creating a new line. And in October 2014, General Cigar introduced Macanudo Estate Reserve, the first time in 15 years that a Macanudo cigar was made using Jamaican tobacco, as an homage to the brand's legacy. So the first release was using a Connecticut shade wrapper, which goes back to the original Macanudo blend that used the Connecticut shade wrapper that was 3 years old. But in the case of the Estate Reserve first release in 2014, they actually used a Connecticut shade wrapper aged 8 to 12 years. And the release was so popular that, again, I mentioned it before, it was re-released in 2015. But this time they went for the Connecticut broadleaf. And this is something that General Cigar has been doing for quite some time. They grow a lot of Connecticut shade, Connecticut broadleaf, and they just have access to incredible tobaccos that a lot of smaller companies just can't get a hold of. So they utilize these tobaccos in these special blends for limited releases, limited editions like this, and others. And frankly, I gotta tell you, they blow my socks off just about every single time when they do this. because you just get a sense of how good the tobacco is, and the age on it. And General Cigar has so much experience in cultivation, hybrids, and just their growing techniques, and all of the individuals that work for them that are highly experienced, and of course their vast amount of resources. Cream, cocoa, a little bit of wood. All right, let me finish this up here. Uh, Basically, this is the specs for the cigar. And now we're going to get to the year 2000, right? In the year 2000, we know already, as I stated before, that the production was moved to the Dominican Republic. They had a hard time with that. A lot of people didn't take kindly to the new Macanudo being made in the Dominican Republic that wasn't using Jamaican tobacco. A lot of people felt it was a downgrade. They lost the European market because of that. Some trials and tribulations along the way. But look, Macanudo, whether you know this or not, I'm going to let you know right now, is the longest tenured brand developed specifically for the American palate after the embargo. Specifically. And it is the longest running and best selling cigar in America, right? So Jamaican tobacco and Jamaican cigar brands did miss the boom, but there is still future. There is still a future for this Jamaican tobacco. They're still growing it, they're still developing it, and they're still storing it away, aging it, and allowing it to mature in the best way, right? So the one other note that I have is that yes, Foundation Cigar and Foundation Cigar, they're very fond of the Connecticut broadleaf as well. They did release the upsetters using Jamaican tobacco, and Charlie Melillo, I believe, he went to Jamaica, fell in love with their tobacco over there, fell in love with everything about Jamaica, and decided to make a cigar employing Jamaican tobacco. How much did they use in the filler? I don't know. But then for that matter, we don't know how much is used in this. And no one ever really knew how much was used in the original Jamaican Macanudo from the 60s and 70s. No one knows, because Ed Coleman did not want to reveal that secret. He actually referred it to as secretive as the way Coca-Cola Company is about their Coke recipe. So that's another thing. And also, Espinosa Cigar Company released Reggae Dread using Jamaican tobacco. So those two companies have used, and there are some other smaller ones, one out of Jamaica as well, Barrington, I believe it is. That is a very small company that also that uses Jamaican tobacco, and I believe they even at one point attempted to make a Jamaican puro. I don't think that they did, but they came pretty close, and they used an all Jamaican filler, which I never got to try, and I think you can still find it. I think if I go online, I can probably try to purchase it, but I just never made a big effort to, because I did get a chance to try vintage Jamaican tobaccos, and I if you watch my historical cigar review on the imperial rise of Jamaican tobacco, you'll see that I detail everything that went into this specially made Jamaican cigar for James L. Gore from the late 80s, and that was using Indonesian wrapper, Indonesian binder, with a complete filler of Jamaican tobacco, and it was wonderful. But as wonderful as it was nearly 35 years old, and it had lost some of that oomph and perhaps some of that Jamaican persona that a lot of people talk about. But this cigar has a sweetness to it. It has a sweetness to it. It has a smoothness to it. It has a creaminess to it. It's just outstanding. And before I go any further, I just want to say thank you to Cigar Aficionado, Holtz Cigars, Macanudo website, and myself, because in doing this video, I kind of obtained information from those sites, but I also obtained information from just watching my previous video and just looking at the notes for that particular video on Jamaican tobacco, and some of it was relevant to this review and some of it just wasn't, right? Because I was focusing on James L. Gore and the history of that particular cigar, whereas here, this is like I said, the granddaddy. I mean, well, James L. Gore was out there before. He was there before General Cigar, before Consolidated Cigar, but he didn't have the reach, that General Cigar does. And General Cigar bought the brand, I believe it was, I forget when they bought the brand, 95, 6, something like that. But I mentioned it in the closer look. But look at this, look at that. I know it's a little wonky, but it's gonna correct itself. It has been, and I just want to share this moment with you guys, let you know what I'm thinking and feeling at this moment, this experience that I'm having with this particular cigar, a cigar that I've chased for nearly a decade, I tell you. Fantastic, smooth, creamy, retrohale, no bitterness, no leather. If anything, an undertone of a soft, buttery leather, but nothing harsh, nothing bitter. Of course, it's been aged, right? And of course, I'm not reviewing a cigar that's freshly released, but this has been in a cellophane inside of a coffin, and it has, from what I've been told, been stored immaculately for someone like myself to come along and buy it and treasure it and smoke it and enjoy it. And that's what I'm doing, right? But I'm also reviewing it. So nostalgia aside, me being partial to Connecticut broadleaf, me being partial to Jamaican tobacco history, putting that aside, I'm telling you right now, this is Macanudo. Some might say, man, when you hear people say, man, that cigar was so tasty, I could inhale it, right? And of course, a smart cigar smoker is not going to inhale it, even if he says it. But sometimes you hear people say that, and when they say it, they don't really mean it. What they mean is, it's just so delicious that I just want to take it all in and, get as much out of it as I can, and just savor it, right? And that's how I feel right now. But I'm not gonna inhale it. I've just been so excited at actually smoking this cigar, getting a chance to cut it and light it, that I've just been lost in the awesome flavors, and I haven't really been thinking about what I'm tasting, but it's not overly complex, but you get the sweetness that's coming from the Mexican San Andres binder. You get the cocoa dusting notes from the Connecticut broadleaf wrapper, which, need I remind you, is 10 years old. 10 years. That adds a layer of refinement, many layers of refinement, to an already wonderful tobacco wrapper. And it just, to me, creates this blend which, as history tells me, harkens back to what made Macanudo great. And what made Macanudo great was the Jamaican tobacco and the use of aged tobaccos overall. At the time, it was Connecticut Shade because that was more in line with the palates of Americans coming off of being weaned off of Sumatran tobacco and doing, after that little dance with Cameroon, because for a short time there was this interest in the Cameroon wrapper for not necessarily the Macanudo brand, but for other lines within the General Cigar brand. And it really just reminds me of that. That original blend also used Mexican tobacco, and it was in the filler that they used it, not in the binder. I mean, that's just the difference there, binder to filler, but nonetheless, you still get those sweet notes that you would normally get from the Mexican San Andres. And, there's a hint of pepper, just a hint, and that small hint of pepper in the finish is very subdued. I would imagine that fresh, it would be a little bit more impactful on the overall finish as you're smoking this cigar. But man, I gotta tell you, the smoothness of a 10-year-old cigar that's done right, because just being 10 years old doesn't make it wonderful. I mean, from all reports, it was wonderful, fresh on arrival, but having this cigar laid down for 10 years just adds another, I don't know, it just makes it that much more special, and it adds to the refinement and the enjoyment of the cigar experience. But that isn't a given. That isn't always how well cigars will age with time. This just happens to be a blend that has benefited from the age. The Connecticut broadleaf wrapper, which is already aged, and usually when you age cigars that have aged filler, it doesn't always work out because the fillers are already aged. But again, I've said this before in other videos, that it really depends on the tobaccos that are in there, regardless of how old they are and how they were fermented and cured, and the whole process. And in Connecticut broadleaf, I find that it ages magnificently. Hey, here's another word that Macanudo means, right? Is magnificently. And that I think is what intrigued me so much about always wanting to try this cigar, and now finally getting a chance, right? I may have a favorite wrapper in the Connecticut broadleaf, but I don't have a favorite vitola size. I don't favor there are some vitola sizes that I do like more than others, but I don't have a specific favorite. But I gotta tell you, 6x57 hitting the spot. I mean, I'm not one for the larger cigars, that are in the 60 plus range. That's not really my cup of tea. But when we're talking about just a well-made cigar that is a little under 60 and is packed of so much delicious tobacco, sign me up. Sign me up. But the tobaccos in here are not necessarily aged for an extreme amount of time, in the filler, that is. Other than the Jamaican tobacco, which is aged 5 years, we don't really know the age of the Nicaraguan and the Dominican tobacco. I'd gather it's probably 3 years old at the minimum, which is pretty good. But I really think that the star of the show here, other than the Jamaican tobacco, would be this Connecticut broadleaf wrapper. And I gotta give props to the Mexican San Andres binder as well, because I know that it's imparting that sweetness that I like, and in combination with the Connecticut broadleaf, it's just ramping up the satisfaction factor big time. I mean, what can I say that I haven't said already, right? A lot of you are going to watch this, some of you at least, and you're probably going to say, "Thanks for the review, Jose, but we can't really find this cigar." And you know, interesting as it is, happy as we are for you to have obtained it and gotten the chance to smoke it, doesn't really do much for our lives because we can't get a hold of it. But what I'm saying to you is, let this be a reminder for when it does return, to keep your eyes peeled for this cigar when it returns, so that you will not be like me and miss the boat and get a chance to buy it and of course try it. Construction, burn line has been good. Got a little wonky in the beginning, straightened itself out. Construction wise, it's been great. Its packaging is pretty nice, right? It's nice when you get a cigar in a coffin like that. The age on it, a plus. Not something I was necessarily looking for. You know, I wanted it when it was released. But better late than never, as they say. The cigar itself is beautiful. I mean, you guys got a closer look earlier, so I don't need to show it to you again. But man, is it a beauty! Man, is it a beauty! And you know, it falls into, like, you know, people that like Maduros. You're gonna love this, right? But it just also, the legacy involved, the history involved, the fact that, you know, this isn't a gimmick here. This is not a gimmick. This is straightforward, accurate historical homage to a legendary cigar blended originally by two legendary blenders. One a lot more famous than the other, right? In Ramon Cifuentes. And also, in its present form, just a masterpiece. A masterpiece. Yeah, with this type of cigar, you can do a bit more retrohales than you normally would with number one, with cigars of this vitola size, being this big, and normally with a tobacco like, you know, Connecticut broadleaf and, you know, Nicaraguan in the blend, can sometimes be a little bit abrasive for certain people that don't like to retrohale, or that do like to retrohale but it affects them, so they're sensitive to it. They can't do it too much, or they choose not to do it too much, wisely, of course. So considered all of that, you just retrohale cream here. Cream with a hint of woody pepper and a sweetness that really is just all over. I mean, it's in the finish, it's up front, it's in the retrohale, it's in the air. You know, the aroma is incredible. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to thank you all for watching this. I mean, this has been extraordinarily wonderful. This has been 10 years of wanting to try this and not having the opportunity, and finally getting it and being wowed. You're probably going to see a review on a very uber expensive cigar before you see this review. And that cigar, from a very prestigious family, tobacco family, would just, it just doesn't compare to this. I mean, if I could buy a box of this, and I believe 10 come in a box with 10 coffins, I would buy multiples. I would smoke them fresh. I would age for 5 and 10 years. I might even age a box for 15 or 20 years, just to see. And if I could, money not being an issue, obtaining it not being an issue, I would smoke this every day, or at least every time I feel like wanting to smoke a nice full-bodied cigar with a ton of flavor and a really good body to it. I mean, this is full-bodied, medium to full-bodied. Now it is, because it's been aged 10 years, so it's been smoothed out, yeah. So it's medium full now. Started off pretty medium, ramped up to medium full by the second, but it's full in body and full in flavor, and I just love it. I really do. I can't say enough about it. I'm like a little schoolboy here, just in awe of this tremendous tobacco. I don't normally talk about cigars in this way. I don't normally get excited about every cigar in this way. And it really isn't just because I've been chasing it for so long. Because I've chased certain cigars that have evaded me for some time, and you know, I find a way to get them, and then kind of like them, you know, appreciate them and enjoy the experience, but don't get wowed, right? And here I am saying to you, yeah, I got wowed big time. I mean, this is just this is delicious. I mean, the amount of cream and cocoa, the nice woody notes with the hints of pepper, and you know, you get some spices along the way too. I didn't mention those because I was so lost in the enjoyment, but you get a few of those spices, something like a cinnamon, you know, traces of like a nutmeg, and you get, like, you know, the cocoa blending with that cream in a way that segues into that finish with the pepper, and the pepper is really toned down due to the age, but such a pleasant way to end on that, you know, when you puff on it, and it just really just comes together in such a special way. And I think that, you know, this is a grand slam. You know, this is a grand slam. Kudos to General Cigar for doing this, for remembering the legacy of Macanudo and how important it is. And you know what? Macanudo was important to Jamaica and to the American palate post-embargo, but it also became a very important part of the Dominican cigar scene, because loads and loads of Dominicans fell in love with Macanudo in the Dominican Republic and really became loyal brand smokers, and really helped propel the brand to where it is today. So it may have started in Jamaica, but it's living very strong in the Dominican Republic, and of course selling incredibly well in the United States. And that's all I have to say about that. But you know, again, thank you for watching this. Delicious. A little bit more leather now as I head towards Nub State, and a little bit of leather with a charred wood almost at the finish, and the cocoa subsiding quite a bit. Sweetness intermingles but is fading, and that's another thing about the cigar, that with the cocoa, you know, you're not getting many bitter notes. You're getting mainly sweet, creamy notes, and boy oh boy. Let me get out of here. Enjoy this nub. Thank you for watching. Until next time, I'm back here at Cigars.